Hello, good day, and good Thursday. It is season 2, episode 2 of the XDI Experience Live Show. There is no business without people. There is no point in changing processes or systems unless you're sure your people will move to adopt them. Today, we're talking the human change system, moving your business forward. Let's do this. This has to be the hardest and most critical part of moving a business forward. So please, please, please ask questions so we can contextualize for you and your business as to what is being said today. See that comment section below. Yes, jump in, please. Jump in at any time. Share your thoughts and your question. Okay, who is joining us today? Well, with 20 years of organizational change management and having managed organizational change from single organizational startups right up to 50,000 people enterprises, she builds change momentum through total integration and total communication. Welcome to Linda Mattingly. So if you're ready, let's get set and let's go. So Linda.
That perfectly captured it.
Yeah, I was thinking John Cleese was about to come on from Monty Python. And if you don't know who Monty Python is, go on YouTube. It's back to Linda and ours era anyway, so we know who they are. How's life in San Diego treating you?
It's great. It's beautiful here in San Diego.
How's the fires? You still got them down there? We're blue skies up here.
It is getting better.
Got it. Hopefully you're close to the ocean. You can jump in there if it gets a little warm.
We're right next to it. That's our plan.
Way to go. Way to go. So today, Linda, first up, we're going quick fire round. Then we're going to jump into discussing the hardest and most satisfying of PLM smart manufacturing programs that you've been involved in, your entry to this world, and finishing up with the human change system that actually works. Okay, everyone, please, your questions, please ask them at any time throughout this conversation. We're going to jump to them at appropriate moments and pick those up and hopefully get those answered for you. So, okay, let us get the show on the road. It is quick fire time.
Okay.
Here we go. All right, quick fire round. We have got stop the clock, 4 minutes for 4 questions. Let's get things moving with question number 1 coming up on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The top 3 most common challenges in changing a culture, Linda.
The first is when a company believes that the outwardly presented culture, usually part of their marketing program, is actually what their culture is.
Okay.
The second is when you have, and this is usually larger companies, a company that believes that a single culture is the same across all of their business units. And then lastly, and this is the most detrimental, is when a company believes that their culture doesn't matter because if they have an executive mandate, that's going to trump everything. And the reason that's detrimental is it looks like you've got support, but you build resentment through your whole project and you don't get a lot of support at the end. Your ROI is low. And in fact, sometimes it's negative.
You bet. Question 2, what defines a modern company culture?
Ooh, it depends on things like how big they are, where they're located, how many employees they have, how long they've been in business. But over the last decade or so, there has been a shift from the employee side from looking for a company where they can have a career or even an industry Two, looking for an opportunity for them to get experience and knowledge so they can leverage that at another place and expand their career. And then they keep doing that over time. And from the company point of view, it's going from really appreciating and respecting long-term employees and seeing them as valuable assets to seeing them as resources that become outdated over time and need to be replaced by newer models.
Bold statement. 3, why do so many companies leave organizational change management until the last possible moment, if at all?
Because they don't understand either the value or the purpose of it. They think that OCM is synonymous with communication. And so what they do is they wait until all decisions are made and before they actually start OCM, and they do it because they believe, well, we don't want to have confusion and we want to build a shared understanding of what's going on. But what that means is all of their changes are made in a vacuum. And so they're expecting almost right before go live to get everybody on board and support something.
Got it. Doing well. Last question, 40 seconds. What's been the greatest change you've been through or observed, and why?
A project that impacted thousands of people, multiple roles. It was global. It was a multinational UK firm. It was PLM, ERP, MES, and they had to build a system to integrate all of those. It was big, and we had to develop then change specialists at each site so that they could then support their own local stakeholders.
Got it. Perfect. With 4 seconds to spare, great job. Let's just see if we've got any questions in from or comments in from the audience. Let me just check. Looks like not. There we go. You're good. Everybody agrees with you. Perfect.
Oh,
good job. Okay. Let's move on to the main discussion. Thanks for that. That was fun. Appreciate it. I don't want to hang around now. Let's jump into the trenches and talk to programs' biggest, hardest, and best human change experiences that you have been through. So jumping right in, what is the best program that you've been involved in and why?
I can tell you why first. It's because the entire team was absolutely aligned on day one, and you don't see that a lot. But It was really difficult because the organization had a very organizational hierarchy centric way of doing things, and they had really entrenched processes that they used. And our approach was, well, first of all, we had nobody in their hierarchy on our team. And secondly, our approach was to move people to action without having any power or authority.
Got it. Got it. So
can I tell you what we were aligned on?
Go ahead, please.
We were aligned on what the vision of success was. In other words, how would we know at the end whether we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish? And we were aligned on embedding organizational change principles in different phases throughout the project.
What were the phases? What were the phases?
The first was planning, and that's where we actually identified what our metric for success was.
Okay.
And then as we moved forward and started actually doing things, we made sure that we knew our stakeholders, both our primary and secondary, all of them, so that we'd be able to identify clearly what needed to be done by whom and when throughout the project.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it.
So
what else?
And then the last thing was, we all agreed that we needed to build mutually respectful relationships with all of our stakeholder groups. We didn't have power, we didn't have authority, but we needed to move them to do what needed to be done, when it needed to be done, and how it needed to be done.
So real kind of empathy and outcome focused. I get it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So what was the actual project?
Well, when my granddaughter was 18 months old, she was diagnosed with a really rare form of leukemia, and it had an 18-month life expectancy and a 100% fatality rate. So our vision for success in this case was that she would get world-class care, but within a loving family environment. And anyone who has experienced this kind of thing knows it's really hard to have the family environment part.
Yeah.
And we had to do that when we could not make any of the changes happen. We had to move other people, and we did it throughout the timeline of this project, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give you two examples on what we did. The first was we needed to move the head of pediatric oncology for a nationally known children's hospital to choose to participate in a very specific clinical trial for this disease. And we did that by making him aware of how that benefited him, something he wanted. And then further down, we had to move an insurance group to change their decision not to cover some very costly medical procedures because they were considered experimental at the time. And we did that by making sure they understood that that would help them avoid something they did not want.
You're dealing with a sector here that is absolutely rigid with rules, rigid with process, for obvious and very understandable reasons.
Yes, absolutely.
But getting two mountains to move is a heck of a thing. How did you actually do that? How did you achieve that?
Well, with the insurance company, you need to understand a couple of things. My son was an employee of the hospital, and hospitals are self-insured.
Mm-hmm.
My granddaughter was the face of the hospital's blood drive and had been for a while, and she'd been in magazines, on TV.
Yep.
So
leverage.
And 15 minutes. I got 15 minutes prep time when my son had to go in and state his case on why they should change. So this is what I instructed. When you go in, shut up and listen, nod your head, and when they're done, no matter what they say these words. I absolutely understand why you had to make that decision. And I'm sure you understand why we have to make this decision. When I walk out of here, I will contact every newspaper, radio station, TV station, magazine that has featured this particular hospital and my daughter, and explain the hospital has decided not to cover her medical care, so we just need to reach out for donations. I said, then shut up. They had him leave the room. He came back in 10 minutes, and they had changed their mind.
I bet.
They had a financial responsibility. They would lose more in donations than they would have to pay to cover her costs.
Amazing. Very carrot for the doc and stick for the insurance company. How's your granddaughter doing?
Well, I'll tell you, we had a successful project. She did get the care she needed in a really loving family environment. And it's the case with really successful change where you have a good change, you end up getting return on investment far after the end of your project. And that is demonstrated in our case because this month she had her 21st birthday.
You're a very different, I mean, yeah, absolutely. But that makes you a different grandma. On Christmas morning, you're proving to be a great ROI. Great. That is a wonderful story. If I can, I'm going to slide you into industry now. What have been the biggest issues that you've encountered going in on a project? Let's spend kind of 5 minutes or so just exploring that world for the moment.
I'm going to go back when you asked me about the biggest. That was also a huge issue. I was called on because they were having real timeline slips, a lot of timeline slips.
Okay.
They were getting a lot of frustration, not just in their teams, but also different groups within the organization because of the slips and how things were going. And they were focused, it had become focused on finger pointing instead of actual problem solving. So when I started, found out they had 3 completely separate teams for this project. Now, this absolutely supported what the company culture was, which is separate and not quite equal for vendors and consultants. But it did support
silos operating.
Absolutely siloed. And that didn't support the ability to do the things you need to do, like certain testing, process validation, risk risk identification, all of those things, because they cross all of these different areas. Working in silos means you don't address them well.
Yep, got it. Funnily enough, next week's show, we are talking about integrators and software vendors and customers and that kind of a mumble and jumble. So very, very interesting. So tell me a little bit more about what you had to deal with.
Well, if I could have been in at the beginning, I would have still had 3 teams, because it's really hard to go against a company culture. So you want to work with it.
Yep.
But I would not have had 3 separate project plans. I would have had a single project plan so that everybody knew how what they were doing would impact, and they could better integrate all of their activities.
Yeah.
I also would have had, and this is something that we were able to integrate later, I would have had an integrated governance process where when they came, they were coming all together.
Yep.
And it would have been focused on actual results versus intended results, and not on we finished these tasks. So that's what I would have done.
Got it.
But so what was happening is, when we investigated, there was virtually no collaboration. And so it had become a very much them versus us. We did our part, we would go on, but we can't because they haven't.
Yeah.
So we focused on really building collaboration, having their work teams work together across regardless of what team they were on. And also we instituted these meetings between each 3 PMs so that they were well aware on how they could work better together. Made a big difference.
It amazes me that, to this modern age, products are getting more complex, not less complex. And how anyone can come into a program with silos is beyond me. I mean, how is that happening these days, Linda?
It's funny, but it's many times triggered by the complexity.
Okay.
There's this mistaken belief that because this is complex, we need to make sure that only the experts are making decisions, and that we don't want to bring in people that don't know quite as much because it's going to delay. We'll have to explain a lot of things to them. And really, if we rely on the experts, we're going to get a better, just a more robust technical solution. Now, I'm going to tell you, I hit this a lot on projects, and this is how I talk to my technical leads. So you have a choice. You can provide an organization a perfect technical solution.
Yep.
Or you can provide an organization a technical solution that perfectly meets their needs. But you can't do the latter unless you know them, and you can't know them unless you're actually working with individuals throughout the organization to get the right input.
Yeah, understand. I mean, I can understand, honestly, from a management perspective, assuming managers are coming from potentially our generations, where we have been through a number of slaps in the face, whereas the newer generations have not necessarily. I mean, we had economic downturns and we band-aid them and we subsidize and we kind of soften the blow. And so it's easier, I think, for the modern generation to talk about collaboration. It's not so easy for us, where we're having to be a little bit more autocratic in our approach, because tomorrow we might get slapped in the face again. So there's kind of 2 different mindsets approaching things. Is it always because of the silos? Is that consistently the biggest problem?
No, in fact, one of the other examples I can give you was from a very complex aeronautic project.
Okay.
And they had no silos. Their team
was that in the US?
Mm-hmm.
Could have been. Could well have been. Carry on.
In this case, what had happened is they had only identified stakeholders that would be using the system, hands-on keys. If they didn't, they weren't stakeholders. So in order to make sense, PLM, one of the biggest things is you get the value of having all data from the designers, from the engineers, from the manufacturing all together, so that it can be put into a workflow, getting to the right people at the right time to make the right decisions, right?
Yep.
That's a value. And in this case, the technical team and every one of the SME subject matter experts from the company delighted with what the solution was. However, and this happened right before I joined. However, the 3 file clerks that went into work the day this was implemented and found out that 80% of what they did had just been eliminated, they weren't nearly as thrilled, nor were their managers thrilled. And HR was really, really not thrilled. So they realized they had to make some change.
Wow.
So the first
I
thing,
mean, PLM, at the end of the day, it is massively reliant on outer departments, functions feeding the system with timely data. It really is.
it is. And not all of those people have their fingers on the keys.
Yeah.
And so in this case, once we identified that there were more than just these few we found out there were a lot more than they had anticipated.
Yeah.
And so where it impacted the project the most was their user acceptance testing.
Okay.
And in this case, it was more of a task-based testing. Does this task work? Yes, move on. And we developed an end-to-end role-based process test, which meant that it had to start with whoever triggered it and go all the way through till it was done, regardless of what their role was or whether they actually touched keys.
Yep.
And I will tell you, we got pushback because the amount of time it took to do that was significantly more. However, when we were done, they identified some impacts that would have been horrible had they not identified the risk that would have caused had we not identified it at that time. Plus, they ended up with all this documentation that they were able to use for training on their processes. They had never actually done end-to-end process mapping.
Wow. Wow. It kind of takes me back to a live show we did the other week, which was all about empathy and EQ. And it just takes us back to that whole empathy culture and the need for it. And for people to actually understand what everybody else is doing and to be understanding of them. That's understandable. Okay. Let's move on to the third brief section. Number 3, entering the world of change. Linda, how did you get involved in organizational change and why?
Well, before I had my first official OCM role, which was with Siemens PLM.
Who?
Nobody. A company.
Never heard of them. Never heard of them. Okay. Yeah.
All of the jobs I'd ever had, no matter where, no matter what organization, one of the things, my primary responsibilities was solving problems to improve business outcomes. Now, it looked different, but that's what it was. So when I had the opportunity to have a role that's actually what the focus was, I was thrilled. I jumped at it. Yeah. I had never heard organizational change manager as a role.
I understand.
But when I look back, that's what I was thrilled about. So that's how I got involved.
When you went in there, what shocked you most as you got involved in the whole thing?
2 things. The first was there were actually methods and templates that had been proven to be effective to address issues so that you get value for your organization. I didn't even know they existed. And secondly, related to that, was that these change methods and processes, even though there was proof, data showing how much value they added to a project, the amount of resistance of including them in an actual project plan.
Interesting. You talk a lot about the kind of outcomes, measurable returns, and for me, I would like to understand more because really it starts there. Because if you really put it out there, the eyes on the prize, and it gives everyone a goal to go for. That's really what I think how things get moving and what starts to give it some focus and momentum. So let's move into part 4, the future system. What system for change have you seen that works and why?
There are a few that are very popular, and they all have they all come in it from a different perspective.
Okay.
but they support three critical tenets of successful organization change. First, change is not easy.
Yep.
Second, if you're going to build a change plan, you have to understand the circumstances, values, and incentives of the individuals that will be impacted by that change. And probably the most critical of these is they all agree change is not big bang. If you want to have successful change, you have to have successful incremental change all along the project in order to build understanding, approval, support, and enthusiasm for the actual outcome change.
Does that mean you actually sit down with each individual and empathize and understand them? Is that what you do?
No, that would be time-wise, you could never do that.
Yeah.
But what you can do is identify what individuals in these impacted groups, and there are assessments you can do that actually talk, how much are you impacted? What do you, in your group, what do you see the value? Where are you concerned? You do these assessments so that you're really, you know more about that group.
Yep.
And I will tell you, not always managers that you want to assess. Sometimes managers don't know what people actually do.
Yep. Agreed. I know. So any particular tools that you use to in your kind of your system?
You know, I really like the tools that ProSci provides. They're easy to use. They're very focused, and I have used them on a lot of my projects. But I also want to say that I follow a certain system on every one of my projects, and it's called it's a scientific system, and it's called systems thinking. And what it's saying is every change takes place within a system. And before you start, you need to understand every part of that system and how they interact with other parts, because you can't know what needs to change when and where unless you know impacts across that entire system. And it's big, but I can tell you how I started. It is a single sentence. One sentence. It has to be, it's a fill in the blank. It should be easy, right? So the first part of it is the purpose of this is to, and that is we're going to install a system. We're going to change our organization structure. If it's personal, we're going to go on a vacation, whatever it is you're going to do.
Okay.
And the second is in a way that blank. How? This is in nuts and bolts. How are we going to do it? Who's going to be involved? What are their tasks going to be? This really is the actual work. What are we going to work? But it is the final part of the sentence that throws people, and it is so that. Why are we doing it? What is the metric for success? And I cannot tell you how many people say that we will have a new system, a new organization. No, that's not value. That's what you're doing. What is the value? When you look out at your organization, how did that provide value?
Yep.
Very different. And one sentence, and it can take a long time, but it's done first because it impacts how you choose to do, implement your project. And the one thing I'll say is if you do it well, I have seen where sometimes what the project is changes. Either the scope gets smaller or larger, but it can change if you actually understand what you want to see at the end.
Yep. And where you're at today as well, of course.
Exactly.
Yep. Understand. Fantastic. Thank you, Linda. Appreciate that. Before we jump to the questions and any comments that we've got in, I see we've got a few coming in here. Here's your chance. We go out on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, all these things. I think collectively we're well over 1,000 people watching. Here's your chance to ask those people whatever you want. Whatever you want. What we're going to have for dinner or whatever. But what would you like to answer the audience that they can answer right now or on the recorded version to come?
Oh, I have a very specific question.
Okay.
I'd like to know, is there any aspect of integrating organizational change in your projects now that concerns you?
Okay.
Like, what worries you about it?
Okay. Okay. What's the kind of common answer you get to that one?
The biggest is that it will take too much time. You don't understand. And this is what I always say. It takes more time at the beginning and
You're going
it
to slow me
saves
down.
way more time at the end.
Yeah, so. I understand. Thanks for that. Everyone, please give us those thoughts. Drop them on the chat and also drop them in on the recorded version as we release this to you after. Let's jump into questions. Let's see what we've got coming in. It looks like we've got a few out there. Let's pick up the first one from Elena Nagy. Let's go with that. If we can throw that up on the screen. Yeah. Do you think it is important to measure the impact the change had on the finances or productivity of the company? And if so, how would you measure that impact?
Yes, that's really important. How you measure it depends on different things.
Yeah.
But I always say, I want people to be happy. They're happy when you have a good change. And you have a good change when it benefits the business, actually tangibly benefits the business. So if you have a metric for success and it is, we will get X amount more business from this group, you can measure that. If it is, we will do things more quickly. You can literally, and when you're in manufacturing, that you can measure how much time it takes to do things. All of those are measurable, and they should be measured so that you know what we did then, the way that we rolled this out was good, and we need to repeat that, or we need to change. It looked good, everybody was delighted, but we got no financial value from it. Or we got no whatever value that we're looking for.
Perfect. Thanks, Linda. Next question. What do we got? From Andrew Austin. What's the key to success when trying to persuade a stubborn employee to change when what they've been doing has been the most consistent for years?
A lot of times, and this happens a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times.
Especially in engineering.
Exactly. Picture a mindset, picture a person, and you realize when this big change takes place, you're going from being the expert on it to realizing you could hire someone now at almost the same expert. So one of it is make sure you engage with them early, get their input to understand what's the value here, and also find out where you can add value and allow them to really build so they become a subject matter expert. That really does help. Also, again, the carrot and stick, I hate to say that because it sounds like you're beating people over the head, but this is what you gain. But if we don't do this, not necessarily what will happen to you, but what will happen to our business. We will lose, we will do this, but both of those. But understand there's fear in change. I'm no longer the expert. Yeah, agreed. Okay, good. Thanks. Next question. What do we got? From France. How do you assess risks associated with a particular change to production, marketing, and sales process? This is where you go back to the assessments and not asking project leaders to assess it, where you go to individuals who really are subject matter experts. This is another reason why they have to be engaged throughout the process so they understand what's changing. But that is how I'm sorry, but I have never known an executive at any company that actually knew the hands-on day-to-day how this is going to affect these people. Yep. So not in the large enterprise. I agree. Totally agree. Understand. Any other questions that we've got? Let's see if we've got one more from Shaktivel. How do you schedule changes? In your opinion, what is the most appropriate time to introduce a big change? In an ideal world, you would be able to choose when you do that. You would be able to say, we've started engaging with our people better, and now we can start this big change that everybody has agreed we want. Okay. In the real world, all of a sudden companies find out, oh my gosh, we have to change. They're not going to support this software anymore. We have to do a different software. We just lost 1/3 of our organization because another company started up and now we need to reorganize, whatever it is, it's immediate. And so the biggest thing, because you don't get to choose when to start, is to choose to engage all along, not just in a project change way, but throughout your organization. Engage with your employees, understand, so that when you have to hit the ground running, you have a better understanding of what your company culture really is and how they would best be moved through the change.
Awesome. That's great. I think we are there. That is wonderful. Linda, thanks again so much for being on the show. What's next for you? What are you doing next?
I had someone contact me, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, working on change with women. In other words, not change within an organization, but how specifically, if they're going to change their career or if they want to retire, whatever they want to do. But it's very focused on what women can do to go through change. So I'm kind of excited about that. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic. Good luck to you. Linda, thanks again. Talk very soon. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks. And thanks you guys for listening.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Okay, next week, everyone, at the start of 2020, I said this is the year for manufacturing execution systems and manufacturing operations management. A year for many manufacturers to grab hold of solutions that would hugely increase automation, productivity, and effectiveness of their lines. And then along came COVID. Well, next week, we are talking being better ready for the next virus through agile, smarter manufacturing solutions implemented cost effectively. Have a great week ahead and see you next Thursday at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, 1600 Central European, 1930 Indian. Thanks again. Have a great week and great day ahead.